The Divine Arsonist, A Tale of Awakening, written and read by the author, Jacob Nordby. Chapter 10. We drove fast, retracing the route to Highway 21. The truck's cab was warm, and I soon noticed a damp wool smell from my suit as it dried. I struggled out of the jacket and laid it over my duffel bag in the back. My state dinner appearance had deteriorated. My hair was matted in wet strings on my forehead. Mud smeared my shoes and pant cuffs. I pulled the front of my shirt as straight as possible. I had managed to get a smudge on the wide part of my tie. "I hope whoever we're going to see will forgive this mess," I said. "Mess?" Lucius looked confused at first. "Oh, your clothes. I wouldn't worry about it." He glanced over at me and noticed Emerson's Bible on my lap. "So, what did you think about that?" he said, nodding at the book. I loosened the leather tie and fanned the pages. "Honestly, I didn't spend any time with it this week. It's beautiful, but I wasn't sure what to do with it. Was I supposed to have read it by now?" He drove in silence for a few hundred yards before answering. "I didn't expect you to do much. Did you even open it?" "Well, sure. I read the Thoreau quote on the front page and saw some more of them scattered around. It looked like mostly blank pages, like a journal." He nodded. "Do you know much about Emerson?" I shook my head. "Not much. I've read some of his quotes. He seems intriguing, though. I probably need to get into his work, don't I?" "Oh, intriguing isn't half the story," he said. "He was an important messenger who made a huge impact in the 1800s. He became known as the leader of the Transcendentalism movement in America. He hung out with people like Thoreau and Nathaniel Hawthorne and Samuel Coleridge. You might enjoy reading his essay titled Nature sometime. There's no hurry, though. Emerson himself would tell you to get rid of your mental baggage. It's not about piling up facts at this point." "So, back to your book. Emerson said, 'Make your own Bible. Select and collect all the words and sentences that in all your reading have been to you like the blast of triumph out of Shakespeare, Seneca, Moses, John, and Paul. As I said in the note I left, this is going to be a very useful friend for you. You'll know more when the time comes. Look through it a minute. Tell me what you notice." I flipped it open about halfway through. The page had 2 quotes on it. I began reading out loud. "The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the 2 worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep." "That's by Rumi," I said. Lucius smiled. "Ah, Rumi, the old Persian. He has a lot to say. Have you read any of his poems?" "No," I said. I was starting to feel inadequate. "I've read stacks of books about business and success. After I left the church I grew up in as a kid, I only focused on my career. I'm fascinated by these ideas, but it's been years since I tried to put any of the pieces together about religion and theology." "Yeah," he said, "don't worry too much about the pieces right now. Actually, tell me about yourself. Start from the beginning. What's the story of Jacob like?" We had made it back to the highway. It was full dark, and the rain fell heavily now. Lucius flipped the left turn signal. We were headed north, away from Boise. "Okay, but where are we going?" He turned his head to look both directions, and then we were moving onto the highway. A green sign with reflective letters said, "Idaho City, 10 miles. "Oh, we still have a way to go," he said vaguely. "It'll take a while." I unbuttoned my top shirt button and loosened my tie. As they dried out, my shoes began to feel tight. I untied the knots and got comfortable. The interior of the cab was finished with gray pebbled leather. It all smelled new. I cleared my throat and looked at Lucius. "So, my story. Where do I start?" "Wherever you like," he said, "unless something sticks out that you want to talk about. Tell me where you were born, who your parents are, that sort of thing." My mind began sorting through folders of memories stuffed in mental cabinets. "Well, let's see," I began. "I was born in Santa Rosa, California in '73. My parents were hippies. In fact, I'm pretty sure I was conceived in a little coffee shack where they were living off the land on the Kona coast in Hawaii. They always told me and my brothers and sisters that they loved all the papayas and grapefruit and mangoes that grew wild near them. We finally pinned them down and made them admit that they also loved the marijuana hedge right out in their front yard. They hated to confess it because they took a hard right turn into Christianity right after I was born. They liked to pretend that they weren't the Hellraisers back in the day. How many kids in your family? He asked. I'm the oldest of 6, I said, 4 boys and 2 girls. The eldest son, he said. What's that been like for you? It was a lot of work growing up, I said. I felt, still do, huge responsibility for the whole family. Seems like I had the job of breaking ground for the others. A few bits of memory swirled in my mind and I fell silent. I interrupted you, he said. You were telling me about your hippie parents. I sat quietly for a minute and thinking about them. It's hard to remember them that way. Actually, I can't. When I was 6 months old, they moved to Idaho. They had heard a myth that the government was giving away free land up by McCall if people would just go and homestead. Dad built a wooden camper shell for their old Dodge pickup. He covered it with cedar roofing shakes and they took off. They got to McCall in November, I think, and discovered there was no free land. They were California people and it got so cold they thought all 3 of us were going to freeze to death. Some guy they met in a coffee shop took pity on them and hooked Dad up with a contact in Boise who might have a little work. We got down there and moved into a converted shed on the back of this person's property. My father was good with wood. He started doing odd jobs and some carpentry, but work was spotty. He was a hippie and really wanted to live off the grid. In fact, down through my life, I see that desire never left him. He tried to fit in and take care of the family, but it never suited him very well. I glanced at Lucius. He was listening, eyes on the road. He looked over and nodded for me to continue. Now that I think about it, Dad had a hard time with life in general. He's an individualist, a philosopher. The whole thing of having a steady job and sliding along comfortable never seemed to work for him. In fact, I never put all this together before, but what I just said colored my whole growing up experience. Dad didn't fit in and neither did we. I remember always feeling like other people lived inside a nice, safe bubble, but not us. We were poor, but it was more than that. Mom found a way to keep us well dressed, so we kept up appearances, but we were standing outside looking in on a world other people lived in and we didn't. This realization developed and emerged like a dark little balloon that floated around between us inside the cab. My face flushed. Lucius looked at me. His eyes were kind and knowing. You're doing well, Jacob, he said. That was a real gift, you know. What was? You were given the gift of not fitting in. I'm sure this is a bad question, but how is that a gift? I spent most of my life feeling awkward. It was painful. You'll learn much more about this later, but you will come to know that you were given the ability to see things differently from other people. The price you paid feels high, but you'll soon understand that it was worth every moment. By the way, most people don't realize that the most precious gifts in life come hidden inside of painful wrapping paper. I'm not sure what to say about that. I've spent almost 2 decades at seminars and reading books learning how to be a successful human. Are you saying I've been wasting my time? He chuckled, then turned serious. Nothing is wasted, ever. All experiences have a purpose. Having said that, you've been working hard in your life to be someone other than who you really are. That has you worn out. It's time for you to come home to yourself and see how it all fits together. I'm sure you're saying something important, Lucius, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm sorry. He shook his head. Don't apologize. It will all become clear. Back to the gift, though. Almost no one can see outside the bubble they were born into. That's what I'm saying. Their apparent reality is everything they've ever known, their way of life, their beliefs, their assumptions. It's all a tightly woven illusion, but they can't imagine life any other way. When someone is given the gift of not fitting in, they have the chance to see things as they really are. More often than not, though, they do what you've done all your life and work themselves to death to look normal. So, I've been doing it wrong? It's not about right and wrong, Jacob. You've been doing it how you've been doing it, that is all. You will find that all your doing has led you to a place of decision. You can choose to keep discovering who you really aren't, or you can take the direct path home and experience who you really are. Circles, I said. You're talking in circles. It makes me dizzy. Ha, he laughed. You just spoke more truth than you can possibly know. The highway was lit by a couple of street lamps ahead of us. We were coming into Idaho City. The road signs read, "Reduced speed ahead, 25 miles per hour, strictly enforced." Lucius braked to a crawl. We passed a U.S. post office and a Mormon church. They were by far the most modern and well-maintained buildings in the little community. Back in the gold rush days, Idaho City had the largest population in the Northwest, even more than Portland. The miners lived in tents and tiny shacks while they worked the dredges in search of a fortune. In fact, over $250 million worth of gold was taken from the riverbeds and hills surrounding the town after the first big discovery in 1862. When the fever passed, the treasure seekers disappeared but left behind a landscape scarred by piles of river rock tailings and semi-toxic placer ponds. By 1920, only 104 people lived in the area. Now, the original wooden buildings on Main Street were home to a few dingy restaurants, some trinket shops, and a combination taxidermy vitamin store. My favorite was the Shady Lady. They claimed to be the location of a brothel once. Now it's just a struggling cafe and gift shop. I liked the character of the old place and the comical, lascivious woman of the night on the painted sign. I pointed ahead to where a dirt street turned left off the highway. "My dad lives back in there," I said. "Really?" "Yes, he bought an old house a couple of years ago after he and Mom divorced. The plan was to remodel it, but he started gutting the place and found out that it was built around a little shack. It's like his mission in life now to figure out how to make it livable." "Your father sounds interesting." "Dad's very complex and intelligent, yes. He's an artist. He taught himself to carve violins. In fact, I play one that he made. It has beautiful mother-of-pearl inlay set in the back. I always wish that he could break free and share his gifts with the world. He has so much talent, but his inner barriers have kept him from—" I searched for the right word. "Finding his music," said Lucius. "Yes, that's perfect. In fact, he was quite musical and even learned to play the violin himself. He bought dozens of classical records, Beethoven, Mozart, and Vivaldi. I fell asleep almost every night listening to the music playing on the turntable when I was only 4 or 5 years old. He would sit and listen and sometimes cry. I remember that now." There are no stoplights in Idaho City. We passed through it, and the small town was swallowed in darkness behind us. "You said something about Christianity earlier," said Lucius. "Care to tell me about that part?" "It's a long story," I said. "We have time. Do you feel some resistance about this?" I drew a deep breath, held it, then blew it out. "Maybe. I don't know." "You said that your hippie parents took a hard right turn and became fundamentalists. How did that happen?" "When I was just a baby, not long after we moved to Boise, my mother met a neighbor woman who invited her to church. Mom was raised Catholic but got caught up in the 60s wave. When she was 17, she hitchhiked to New York City from California, then took a one-way flight to Paris. She taught herself to speak French on the street in less than 3 months and then traveled around Europe. After she came home, she plowed right into the whole Haight-Ashbury scene. In fact, she told me that she was thumbing a ride outside of San Francisco once and got picked up by Carlos Santana and his band on their way to a concert. Crazy times. Anyway, after he met Dad, they tried to connect the spiritual dots without all the religious baggage. He didn't grow up going to church, and she was sick of her alcoholic parents and their hypocrisy. They dabbled with Eastern ideas, meditated, smoked lots of pot. Dad was more of a philosopher, but my mother was all about action. Not long after we moved to Idaho, Mom went to a Pentecostal church where they speak in tongues and roll around on the floor. She liked the vitality, but she said some of it seemed phony. As I said, they moved into this little house. Actually, it was a converted chicken shed down in Boise, not far from the river. After 2 or 3 weeks, a neighbor lady knocked at the door. Turns out she just had her 4th baby and noticed Mom carrying me around in a backpack. They became friends, and the lady invited my parents to church. Dad didn't go, but Mom did. I stopped talking and looked out the window. Lucius was quiet. To our right, I knew the stream flowed close to the road, but it was invisible in the darkness. "So, what kind of church was this?" "How much do you know about churches?" I said. Just assume I can follow along," he said. A fine, evasive answer. "It was called Bible Missionary. It broke away from the Nazarene Church in the 1950s. They got too liberal, the Nazarenes, started allowing women to cut their hair, and the big issue of the day was whether or not television should be allowed in the home. The Nazarenes said yes, the Bible missionaries said no. So you grew up... Yes, I grew up without television. No TV, no movies, no dancing, no bowling. We didn't wear short sleeves, and the women had to wear long dresses. My mother never cut her hair. We weren't allowed to wear any jewelry, not even wedding rings. We went to church at least 3 times a week, sometimes every night during special meetings called revivals. That does sound extreme in modern America, he said. We were taught to see anyone who wasn't part of our group as the world, I told him. Even most other church people, Baptists, Methodists, had enough wrong in their doctrines that we didn't associate with them. Catholics and Mormons were just going straight to hell, naturally. He laughed out loud and slapped the steering wheel. It was funny. I hadn't told anyone this story for a long time. Explaining it to an outsider was always difficult unless they had experienced something similar. It wasn't just the dress code, though, I said. We believe that man is sinful and could only be saved from hell by accepting forgiveness from Jesus Christ. That's in line with most Christian churches, isn't it? He said. No, let me finish. My group took it a step further. They believed in something called a second work of grace. A what? He said. They also called it sanctification. Basically, if you allowed God to forgive your sins, then you were saved. This was like a first step on the path toward heaven. It was an insurance policy against going to hell when you die. That was the first work. So then, sanctification did what? That's more complicated. Are you sure I'm not boring you? He shook his head. Go on. Sanctification was when you would go and pray for a long time. Usually this was done at an altar in front of everyone. It got noisy. Preachers and other people would scream and pray at the top of their lungs and pound you on the back. What were you hoping sanctification would do? You were trying to achieve total surrender to God's will. God was supposed to purge the sinful nature that all men are born with. Once this happened, you were supposed to be delivered from anger, lust, greed, envy, things like that. That's ironic, he said. What's ironic? No, just keep going. It's interesting to hear you use the word surrender. What else? Did sanctification work? That's the trouble. It was so nebulous. On one side, my church claimed that the Bible said you had to get it if you wanted to escape hell. On the other side, it was difficult to know for sure when you got it. He waved his hand. Wait, this was going to happen all at once, not over years? Right, you were supposed to pray and wait and struggle until you were sure that it happened to you. Some kind of a certainty would hit you. You got it, and that was that. So what happened to you? Did you ever get it? I sighed. I thought I did. You have to realize this was very important in our group. I was the model oldest kid in my family, too. Good grades, obedient. I desperately wanted to fit in and keep the authorities happy. When I learned that I needed to get sanctified, I went for it. It was confusing. I would have stood on my head for months if they'd told me to. I didn't want God mad at me, and I didn't want people disappointed either. I was such a good kid. I never really did the whole teenage thing. I was too busy walking my religious tightrope and suppressing wrong desires. It wasn't hard for me to look the part. That's fascinating, he said. What happened later? You obviously broke away at some point. Oh, I did, I said. Wow, that was a terrible time. My mind sorted back through old files and opened the one containing memories from that period in history. The pain and confusion were thick. I can imagine, he said. I'm surprised you left. What could have happened to break you free? I mean, when someone is really tied up needing other people's approval, it's almost impossible to step away without something major happening. What I said before about fitting in? I found a way to fit in with this group. I went to Bible school and got top grades. I met Jennifer and we got married. Her father is a minister in that church. I became a song leader and a Sunday school teacher. They trusted me and needed me, I said. Which makes it even more surprising that you left, he said. This wasn't just a light activity for you, was it? No, that's who I was. In a group like that, it's not easy just to walk out. Everyone is under constant scrutiny. The congregations were small. Everybody's in everybody's business. I was 100% immersed. So how, he asked. Something about my childhood, I said. The mixture of being poor and always on the outside. Whatever it was, I had a burning desire to chase the American dream. I read piles of books about success and business. I took jobs in sales and worked up business plans. Anyway, at the same time I was being a Sunday school teacher, this other new person was emerging. I happened upon some books by Wayne Dyer that rocked me. They nailed me with questions I couldn't answer. It was disturbing. My safe little world as an important church person started to look like a prison. Also, being in the business community, I started to spend time with people who claimed to be Christians. Turned out they were good people, honest. Some of them were even a lot more friendly and Christ-like than the people in my church who had their black belt in purity. My face was hot. I worked my jaw that was clenched so tight I was sure my teeth would crack. I'm angry, I thought. Why am I angry? This stuff was done years ago. Lucius looked over. You're doing well. Do you know what this is called? No, what? I asked, fuming internally. Recapitulation, Lucius said. I've seen that word, but I don't really know what it means, I told him. Recapitulation. You move your attention back through your stored memories. Can you feel the energy? Yes, it doesn't make any sense either. I'm angry right now, but all of this happened a long time ago. It's over, I said. My voice came out harsh and much louder than I intended. Let's examine that, he said. Describe what you're feeling right now, like a picture. I closed my eyes. My breath came hard, ragged and shaky. I opened my eyes. My glare was intense with itchy heat. Words expanded in my chest and crowded each other in a suffocating rush to find expression through my mouth. I'm tied up with hot bungee cords, I said. I wrapped my arms around my chest and squeezed my ribcage with splayed fingers. It's a spiderweb cocoon. I can barely move or breathe. It's not fair. I didn't ask for this. All these people standing around looking at me. They want me to be something I'm not anymore. I'm trapped. I'd rather choke to death than let them down. They need me to keep being what I've always been. They seem afraid. Like if I break free and leave them, it will open a door and let in a demon. They'll be in danger and it's all my fault. My breath pushed out as heavy as wet cement. I was nauseous. Lucius sensed my distress. He pulled over and stopped beside the road. I clawed at the door looking for the handle. Then I was out on my hands and knees in the rain. My gut heaved and a choking wave of anger washed out with the vomit. A painful animal growl ripped through my body. My spine arced, and my fingers were stiff claws in the sharp, wet gravel. I groaned and retched until nothing was left in me, only thin strings of mucus hung from my mouth. Lucius knelt beside me. I heard him whisper strange words in a language I couldn't understand. His hands weren't touching me. He stroked the air a few inches above my back. All is well, he said. All is well. My muscles relaxed at once, and I would have bloodied my face on the rocks if Lucius hadn't caught me. He lifted me to a sitting position and rested his fingers lightly on my shoulders. Can you get in the truck? He asked close to my ear. Take your time, but you're getting soaked. I nodded, and he helped me to my feet. The rain soaked through my hair and trickled cold down my temples. I crawled into the truck, and Lucius shut the door behind me. He went around to the driver's side and rummaged in the back seat. Here, he said. He had found a small white towel and held it out. I dried my face, then pressed the cloth against my eye sockets. It had a pleasant herb smell, lavender and something else. My lips felt raw and swollen. The wet knees of my suit pants stuck to my skin. We were moving again. Lucius hummed a quiet tune in the darkness. Something nudged my leg, and I looked down. Lucius held a water bottle for me to take. It was cool in my hands, and when I took a sip, the water was sweet. Its freshness washed away the acid in my mouth. You're wondering why these sudden waves of emotion keep rolling you over? It's not normal, and you're afraid you might be going crazy, he said. I blinked and shook my head. A mind reader. He just read my mind, I thought. Yes, he said. It's not hard to do. I looked at him. What? Read your mind. It's not difficult. Humans have this ability, but most are hypnotized by their own story. The story creates interference. Save this idea for later. Right now I want to talk about what's happening with you. My purging experience was still vivid inside me. I was relieved but exhausted. Small electrical charges were arcing between my solar plexus and spine. I sat quiet, holding the water bottle between my knees and waited for him to continue. Like I said last week by your campfire, normally I would have taken much more time with you. I would have become your friend, and we would have gradually stepped through doors of awakening. You will come to see that time is short. I must accelerate your progress. Your mind will never accept the truths I have for you. The only way is to expose you to powerful energy that will bypass your mind and go straight into your soul. Like all humans, you have layers of misunderstanding and old errors wrapped around who you really are. These are like wounds hidden under your clothes. You carry them around and pretend they don't exist. Each of them drains your power and leaves you weak. I have been sent to pull back the curtain and to let fresh air and light shine in your life, so the lesions on your spirit can heal. You have work to do on Earth, but first you must see your illusions for what they are. That won't be easy. You are addicted to your story. I leaned back in the seat. Lucius adjusted the buttons on the stereo, and soft music filled the warm darkness. "So you're making these surges happen to me?" I said. When I looked over, Lucius was concentrating on the road ahead. The cobalt blue light of the dashboard glowed on the lower half of his face, leaving his eyes hidden in shadows. "Let's just say that my energy touches your latent emotions. Together they create a kind of harmonic buildup that explodes like fireworks in your nerves. Your other responses are just a result of that release. It has to go somewhere," he said. "I'm having a hard time with all this stuff," I said. "Energy, harmonic buildup, my story. It kind of makes sense, but I keep trying to imagine how I'll ever explain this." He shook his head. "This isn't set up so you can explain it. You need to forget everyone else and just be in the experience. Again, you're addicted to your story. You're addicted to how everyone sees you and whether or not you can maintain your stature with them." My story, I said. "What do you even mean by that?" He sighed. "You'll get to see what I mean soon. Your story is everything you think you are. In your case, it's also everything you imagine other people think you are. You have a number of stories mixing inside. That's the trouble. You don't know who you really are, so you're forced to keep dancing with the shadows of yourself. You don't have the perspective to understand this yet, but it will come." A half-buried question raised itself, something he had said before we started our drive together. "You said earlier that some people are waiting for us. Who are they?" "Oh, them." He paused and didn't say any more. I expected him to continue, but he just watched the road in silence. We were navigating the tortured curves where Highway 21 summits at 5,800 feet and starts to descend into Lowman. Rain hitting the windshield had turned slushy, and white flakes whipped past the window like tracer bullets when I peered into the night. I leaned back and rested. Fatigue settled like a black hood over me. I closed my eyes. Just for a few minutes, I thought.